Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1589A, and today's date is June 11th, 2018, and the title of the episode is IMF, the Global Economic Outlook is Getting Darker and Darker. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we know that the powers, the elite, the central banking system, they do not want cryptocurrency. They're trying to push people away from cryptocurrency. And yes, if they can get full control over cryptocurrency by creating their own coin and having governments say, this is the coin you need to use, then they'd be all for cryptocurrency. But they don't want cryptocurrency where it's outside of their control. So what they're doing is they're making it seem very volatile. They're hacking exchanges. Now, you have to remember, the exchange is not Bitcoin. The exchange is not Ethereum. The exchange is not any of the cryptocurrencies. This is where you can trade cryptocurrency, you can store them in wallets, and it is a centralized location, just like the banking system. I mean, if you look at the banking system, we've seen hacks into the banking system because it's a centralized system. This is why the next generation of the blockchain system, we're going to see decentralized exchanges, because we could see with centralized exchanges, they can be hacked. Now, are they hacking the blockchain? No, they are not. They're hacking the actual exchanges where everything comes together and it's centralized. And this is very important. Now, over the weekend, 42 billion was wiped off the cryptocurrency market. And this is over a small North Korean exchange hack. This is CoinRail, announced that their hack via their website, calling it system maintenance, and it's still down. It says system maintenance on there. And basically, the small Korean exchange stated that these hackers stole up to about 30% of the digital tokens in its storage. CoinRail confirmed that the remaining 70% had been safely moved to a cold wallet and remained unharmed. And we see right now that this is a centralized system right here, and this is why in the future it will not be like this, because right now the banking system is centralized. And think about all the hacks that have been happening at the banking level because everything is centralized. Now, CoinRail, it's a very small exchange that has a daily trading volume of around 2.5 million. Now, in comparison, the top two cryptocurrency exchanges, OKE and Binance, have roughly about 1.7 billion traded on each of their exchanges a day. CoinRail is only the 98th largest crypto exchange. So it's really not that big. And of course, the hack is bringing up major red flags, and people are saying, oh my God, I better get out of cryptocurrency. The Wall Street Journal's out there saying, because of the hack, it looks like the Bitcoin price fell by 11%. Well, no, these are all the people that got nervous and started to panic sell. Actually, this is a good time to purchase because all these people thought, oh my God, Bitcoin's being hacked, when really Bitcoin is not being hacked. It's the exchange where everything comes centralized to one location. And eventually what's going to happen in this, like I said before, this is going to change. Now, if you want to know more about cryptocurrencies, you want to learn about more, you want to learn how to trade, you can go to the X22reportschool.com, and on that website it explains what the school is, it explains what the trading room is, and you can learn about it. Now, we understand that the economy is breaking down very, very rapidly, and we're seeing that in China, the credit impulse gauge is down in the negative territory. And we talked about this before on how, and just yesterday in our report, on how credit is going to freeze up. And we're going to see the same thing happen before, because if we look back in time, we can see every single time that credit declines, the credit impulse gauge declines, we see a credit crisis. Now, we saw this back in 2008. And we're seeing it today as the credit impulse continually declines. And basically what's going to happen is that everything's going to start to slow up. Everything's going to come to a screeching halt. Everything's going to freeze. And the entire system is going to be in trouble. Now, what's very interesting, Bernanke is out there and he's saying that, yeah, we're going to see an economic collapse in 2020. And of course, this is the individual that couldn't even forecast a recession in the same year where he said, I don't see a recession. We're not forecasting a recession. There's nothing wrong. Everything's contained. And we had the recession later in 2008 when he told us in 2008 we weren't going to see a recession. So if we go back in time a little bit, Bernanke saw no risk to the economy when there was $13 trillion in deficit, 4.7 trillion Fed QE bubble, 1.5 trillion increase in taxes, stagnating real wages, productivity growth and labor participation rate at 1978 levels, but he's worried about the tax cuts right now. Everything else, he didn't see a problem. The biggest worry is these tax cuts. And he says with this and with the tariffs, the whole thing's just going to implode. What these central bankers are really saying is that their system is not going to survive. Remember, the system we're in is not a people system. It is a system that the central bankers created. And when they say the whole thing's going to fall apart, they're talking about themselves. They're talking about what's going to happen when their system completely implodes and a new system is born. And they don't want their system to implode. I mean, look at Argentina right now. They just had a record bailout from the IMF, and it looks like they're in trouble again because you cannot fix the problem with more debt. And we'll have to see what the IMF does this time, because what we're seeing right now is the peso is collapsing again, and the entire system is in free fall, which means either they have to come up with more funding and show that everything is great, but again, you're just feeding in more debt into Argentina, pushing austerity on the people, and it's a complete and utter disaster. And again, the central bankers, they cannot let a country implode, because everyone would point the finger at the central banks and say, why did you make this country collapse with so much debt? So they're very careful on what they do. And this is why they need to make sure every time they give more and more debt, this is why they need to have the governments, and they're forcing the governments to push austerity on the people, to cut programs to pay for their debt. It's a never-ending cycle which will continue on, and they try to keep the countries in limbo. We see right now that Merkel and the EU, they're looking to impose retaliatory tariffs on the U.S., and we see that things did not go well in the G7, and it looks like the EU members voiced their support for a plan that would slap 25% tariffs on up to $3.3 billion in U.S. goods. And eventually, this is going to come back and hurt Europe. And we see right now they're trying to figure out a way around everything that's going on. And the biggest problem now is that we have the deep state, the central bankers on one side, the U.S., the patriots on the other side. And what's happening is the old central banking system, the way they had it, is being pushed out, and they don't like it. They don't know what to do. And this is why Christine Lagarde is out there, and she is the head of the International Monetary Fund, and she's pointing out that there's a problem with the global economic outlook, and it's darkening day by day. She's saying that Trump's America First trade policy, well, it looks like it's having a terrible effect on the global economy. And the clouds are rolling in. It's getting darker and darker, and it's not going to work out for the global economy if we continue on in this way. And Lagarde unleashed a thinly veiled attack on Trump's trade policy, saying that challenges to the way trade is conducted were damaging business confidence, which had soured even since the weekend G7 summit. The Washington-based IMF is sticking to its forecast for a global growth of 3.9%. And you know, the IMF is always off in their forecast. They always say, oh, it's going to be around 4%, and they say it's going to be around 3.5%, and then they come down to 2%, and they keep doing this over and over and over. And if you look back in time, this is what they've done continuously. They're never right on what the global outlook is going to be. And she went on to say that the clouds are on the horizon, and we are now seeing signs that things are getting darker by the day. And the biggest and darkest cloud that we see is the deterioration in confidence that is prompted by an attempt to challenge the way in which trade has been conducted, in which relationships have been handled, and in which multilateral organizations have been operating. Basically, what she's saying is you are questioning the way the central banking system has run over many, many years. And we don't like this because now you are going after our system. And this is the problem, because what is involved? The World Trade Organization, because Trump is not abiding by the World Trade Organization. He's not doing this globally. He's doing it on bilateral trade, where he's dealing with one country here, this country here, just like China is doing. And the central banking system does not like this whatsoever. And what they're saying is that this is not good for them. Remember, this always comes back to them because this is their system. This is their global economy. It's set up to profit these individuals in the Bank of International Settlement, the IMF, the Fed, the ECB, and the rest. It's not to benefit the people. And what's happening right now is there's friction because there's a pushback where past leaders would just go along with the central banks. They get paid off, they get perks, and now what's happening is the Patriots and Trump, they're pushing against the central banking system. And the central bankers don't like this. And this is why I do believe, in the end, there will be a push to remove the central banking system. Not just the U.S., but I believe Russia, China. This is their main push in the end, because we know that Russia has taken over the Rothschild central banking system. China right now is working with Trump and the Patriots, and I think their eventual move, is to remove the central banking system. And again, I go back to Andrew Jackson hanging in Trump's office, where Andrew Jackson basically got rid of the central banking system, and I think this is where this is headed. And again, it all comes down to who controls the narrative. And right now, what Trump is doing and the Patriots are doing, they're pushing this system, which is a central banking system, to the edge, reworking it. Remember, we've been in this system since 1913, and it went completely haywire in the 70s when we came off the gold standard. And it was a complete central banking system at that point, and it just got worse and worse as time went on. And we are at the end game right now. This is what the end game looks like. When the central banking system is completely failing, they're just creating currency, they're shoving it into banks, they're propping up the stock market, they manipulate all the numbers, and they keep doing this because they need a way out. And believe me, their unwinding of a couple of billion, that's not their way out. Upping the interest rates, lowering the interest rates, that's not their way out. Their way out was to have an event to cover up everything they did, and to explain away why everyone has to sacrifice and why everyone has to basically accept the austerity as we move into this event, which most likely would be a war. The problem now is they don't have that, and they're struggling. They don't know what to do at this point because that's what they normally have. And every time they try to push that agenda, it's being stamped out. And they thought they were going to have a different player in office. They thought they were going to be going down this route where they would have this event and they could blame this on this other nation and blame it on the war, blame it on everything. And this way, once everything's all said and done, they can restart the system, because no one will remember what happened with the economy. Everyone would forget after the war. They would have no knowledge of it whatsoever. They wouldn't care. They would just be happy that the war has ended. And again, the central banks would make out because all the countries would need to borrow to rebuild, and they would get their hands back into every single one of the countries, and all the countries would be in debt to the central bank. Right now, there's a problem. There's no war, and they want one. They need an event. So what do? How do they get around this? This is their problem, because their entire global central bank economy is falling apart. The debt can't be sustained, and you're seeing one country after another implode. Yes, they can pile on more debt, but it will only last for a while until it implodes again. And then another country is going to go, and then another banking system is going to go, and this is going to continue on. Before you know it, the whole thing comes crashing down. And this is why we are definitely heading towards this transition. This is why everything is being set up. Everything is being set up for after the whole system comes down. And this is why we see all of this, because we need to destroy the old system to get to the new system. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.